So DLive does have a functionality to take a stream and download it. The last time I did that, it took a long time, and the audio and the visuals were out of sync. So let us do some Niech, but let's see if we can do it. We're going to do two recordings at the same time. We're going to start the stream now, and then we're also going to be recording it. And we'll see if this works, period. Because I'm seeing the audio input, I'm seeing the video input on the OBS as well as the good old photo booth. So we'll see if things start streaming here in a second. I saved the details. How long is this going to take? Okay, so something is popping up. Very good. Thank you, technology, for blessing me this day. You know, science is a super sovereignty. Science is something we appeal to. I'm reminded of the situation Alexander the Great found himself in when he was in his invasions, one of his many invasions. A group of Chaldean or Babylonian astrologers came up to him and they said, Alexander, we've been looking out at the stars. We've been checking some things out here, and it seems like, frankly, you're going to run into some troubles here. You're going to have some problems if you invade this city, because don't take our word on it. The stars told us. And then some Malaysian atheistic Greeks, they heard about this and they said, Alexander, you're not seriously listening to these Chaldeans. You know, haven't you heard, I think it's Plotinus. Is it Plotinus effect of stars on humans? I forget exactly what the name of the work is. On whether the stars are causes. So I think this is Plotinus, yeah? Whether the stars are causes. I want to find the text. Where's that? Tell me about Plotinus. When was Plotinus around? Was he around? It looks like he was around after Alexander the Great. Plotinus was influenced by the works of Alexander, but that's a different Alexander. Yeah, he was not around at the same time, but I believe Plotinus does write against causal astrology. Are these stars causes? This attributes irrationality to a perfect universe and invites moral depravity. So this is some interesting stuff. So in the same way that the astrologers came to Alexander, they said, Alexander, I know based on your military knowledge that you want to go into the city and to attack. We know you want to do that. However, you should not do that, because if you do, the wrath of the stars will be upon you. It's not an astrologically good decision to make. And then these atheists come along and say, no. Trust yourself. Trust your own sovereignty, Alexander. We're not military generals. You are. So make the best decision that you think there is to make. Don't listen to these people trying to interfere with you. Now, what Alexander ended up doing, I don't exactly remember. Maybe he waited a few days for the wrath of the stars to pass. I don't exactly remember what he ended up doing. But in any case, today we have a situation where people are told not to trust their intuition, but instead to trust science. If a scientist says something, then it's true. And if you go against science, you're ignorant, you're uneducated, you're in some cases morally depraved. And what's worse than just not following science or being anti-scientific is to be pseudoscientific. In the same way that it is worse to, in terms of Christianity, it's one thing to not know of the Gospels. It's one thing to be ignorant of the Gospels. But it's a different thing to reject the Gospels, to reject Christ, to then become anti-Christ. And to substitute one Christianity for another. This is where we get into transvaluation. We talk about good and evil, or morality in general. Certainly, the humans and animals all together collectively have some kind of orientation or teleological or impetus within themselves, genetically or learned behavior, which we could say is on some spectrum of morality, some spectrum telling animals, telling humans what to do. You know, when you see insects like spiders engage in these complex mating rituals, there was a comment. Someone said, humans have lost the ability for animal perception. And it is an interesting question. When we are thinking consciously, we are divorcing ourselves from animal perception. But you kind of have to ask yourself, like, what is the insect perceiving in that moment? Like when the black widow is mating, and the male, he does his mating dance, and he approaches the female and he begins to mate with her. And then at some point, the female turns on the male, wraps him up in webs, and kills him and eats him. Or I guess the spiders eat their prey live. But there's like a cannibalism there. The spider is eating its own mate. That's why the black widow is such an infamous creature. But you look at that and you sort of wonder what, on like a Freudian level, what is going through the head, what is going through the spirit, what is going through this male spider in these moments where it is following this biological programming to approach the female in a complex way and to attract the female's attention, to mate with the female, only to be killed by the female. And this happens again and again, over and over again. This is part of the species of the black widow. This is the process. And you look at that process and you're like, what is going on here? So when we talk about the distinction between a super sovereignty and a sovereignty, it almost seems as if we can look at genetics itself as a super sovereignty, that maybe the black widow doesn't want to, the male black widow, he doesn't want to go get killed. But he is forced into that position by his genetics. He is forced to crave this temporary, whatever stimulant, whatever impulse forces him there. It forces him to kill himself. Is that something he wants on some deeper level, or is that his authentic sovereign desire? So distinguishing between like the thing in itself, the individual, and then the genetic architecture that points us in a certain direction, which is truly the sovereign. And when Dawkins talks about the selfish gene, the gene is an individual within a complex ecology of genetics. What is its sovereignty then? When the individual sacrifices himself or herself for a greater collective, any multicellular system is an appeal to a kind of a super sovereignty. When the human being sacrifices their own desires for morality, civilization, Christianity, whatever it is, that is a super sovereignty. But that is the multicellular project. Multicellular life requires a kind of super sovereignty in a way, of the sacrifice of the one for the benefit of the many, for the collectivism that Nietzsche critiques as Chinese civilization, Judeo-Christianity. So this is necessary, and yet the reason I'm engaging with this is because, it's one thing to go on Twitter and talk about traditionalism, and then you start to see like the hypocrisy of that, right? You see the hypocrisy of, why don't you join a religious cult? Why are you engaging with technology? It doesn't really make sense. But you see this tension that Gregory Sadler talks about his analysis of Nietzsche. You see this tension, and eventually we'll get maybe to the part where Nietzsche says it himself, within the individual, not between the individual and society, or the individual and Christianity, or the individual and super sovereignty, or anything like that. But it is within the individual feels both drawn toward a sense of order, a sense of peace, but also the individual is drawn toward chaos, and also the individual is drawn toward his or her own will. So there's this tension there that is unresolved. It's not resolved definitively in either direction. You don't just go for ultimate order and ultimate peace and ultimate finality, because that seems to me to be death. But then you can't also go to the other extreme, which would be a kind of schizophrenic mania of just doing whatever you feel in the moment there are so many laws, there are so many constraints that surround us at all times. There's an invisible field of walls, not physically, but psychologically and socially, that impede us. Everything we say, language itself is confined by these rules, which is why I think there's that famous work of literature by that Irish guy. Oh, geez. I'm gonna mess up on what it is called. I'm thinking it's not Blake. Finnegan's Wake, I think, is what I'm thinking about. James Joyce, yes. The idiosyncratic language, the neologisms, the stream of consciousness. So this was written in over a period of 17 years, published in 1939. And this is kind of what I think of when I hear of a kind of Nietzscheanism, or an expression of like the pure will of the individual sovereign, irrespective of the surrounding society, irrespective of the priest class and these super sovereignties and this constraining morality, but the morality of this idiosyncratic morality, doing what you want to do. And of course, there's all kinds of analyses of Finnegan's Wake that try to pull some order out of it, that try to make coherence of it. But oh my goodness. There's all kinds of really long words. You can tell I've never read Finnegan's Wake, but I've heard of Finnegan's Wake. So let's put that to rest. Is that the destiny of the Nietzschean idea, that we engage in this kind of hyper-modern, idiosyncratic creation of our own sovereign metaphysics, that we ourselves author in our individuality? Can we ever really escape our genetic lineage? Are we at all times, in an evolutionary sense, trying to escape our lineage, trying to transcend it, trying to go beyond it? We see technology. It's not human beings who are becoming these Übermenschen, but it's technology that is overcoming humanity. We are not authoring the destiny of the future. It is this artificial intelligence which is going down this path, seemingly. So yeah, that's a little bit of rambling to start us off, to get us on the right footing for a little bit of Nietzschean understanding. What's going on here? We want to. There is order in front of us, and yet we rebel against it. Why is that? And how can we understand it in its purest form, and the best arguments for it, so that we could understand the best arguments against it, to see what kind of balance or ultimate decision, or if the result is indecision. Let's explore the German, because just listening to the English gets a little bit boring. Just listening to the Sadler lectures gets a little bit boring. Im Grund lag mir gerade damals etwas viel Wichtigeres. I have to quiet this a little bit. Am Herzen als eigenes oder fremdes Hypothesenwesen über den Ursprung der Moral, oder genauer, letzteres allein eines Zweckes willen, zu dem es eins unter vielen Mitteln ist. Es handelt sich für mich den Wert der Moral, und darüber hatte ich mich fast allein mit meinem großen Lehrer Schopenhauer, my great teacher Schopenhauer, auseinanderzusetzen, an den wie an einen gegenwärtigen jenes Buch die Leidenschaft und der geheime Widerspruch jenes Buchs sich wendet, denn auch jenes Buch war eine Streitschrift. What is this word? Streitschrift. It sounds like an enemy book or something. We'll find out soon enough. Es handelte sich in Sonderheit den Wert des unegoistischen, der Mitleids, Selbstverleugnungs, Selbstopferungsinstinkte, the self-sacrificing instinct, welcher gerade Schopenhauer so lange vergoldet, vergöttlicht und verjenseitigt hatte, bis sie ihm schließlich als die Werte an sich übrig blieben, aufgrund deren er zum Leben, auch zu sich selbst, Nein sagte. Aber gerade gegen diese Instinkte redete aus mir ein immer grundsätzlicherer Argwohn, eine immer tiefer grabende Skepsis. Gerade hier sah ich die große Gefahr der Menschheit, ihre sublimste Lockung und Verführung. Wohin doch? Ins Nichts? Gerade hier sah ich den Anfang vom Ende, das Stehenbleiben, die zurückblickende Müdigkeit, den Wille gegen das Leben sich wendend, die letzte Krankheit sich zärtlich und schwermutig ankündigend. Ich verstand die immer mehr sich greifende Mitleidsmoral, welche selbst die Philosophen ergriff und krank machte, als das unheimlichste Symptom unserer unheimlich gewordenen europäischen Kultur, als ihren Umweg zu einem neuen Buddhismus, zu einem Europäer-Buddhismus, zum Nihilismus, diese moderne Philosophen Bevorzugung und Überschätzung des Mitleidens ist nämlich etwas Neues. Gerade über den Unwert des Mitleidens waren bisher den Philosophen übereingekommen. Ich nenne nur Plato, Spinoza, La Rochefoucauld und Kant, 4 Geister so verschieden voneinander als möglich, aber in einem eins, in der Geringschätzung des Mitleidens. In reality, I had set my heart at that time on something much more important than the nature of the theories of myself or others concerning the origin of morality, or more precisely, the real function, from my view, of these theories, was to point to an end to which they were one among many means. The issue for me was the value of morality, and on that subject I had to place myself in a state of abstraction, in which I was almost alone with my great teacher Schopenhauer, to whom that book, which I guess is just Streitschrift, that book with all its passion and inherent contradiction, for that book was also a polemic, Streitschrift, polemic, turned for present help as though he were still alive. The issue was, strangely enough, the value of the unegoistic instincts, the instincts of pity, self-denial, and self-sacrifice, which Schopenhauer had so persistently painted in golden colors, deified and etherealized, that eventually they appeared to him as it were high and dry as intrinsic values in themselves, on the strength of which he uttered both to life and to himself his own negation. But against these very instincts there voiced itself in my soul a more and more fundamental mistrust, a skepticism that dug ever deeper and deeper. And in this very instinct I saw the great danger of mankind, its most sublime temptation and seduction. Seduction to what? To nothingness? In these very instincts I saw the beginning of the end, stability, the exhaustion that gazes backwards, the will turning against life, the last illness, announcing itself with its own mincing melancholy. I realized that the morality of pity, which spread wider and wider, and whose grip infected even philosophers with its disease, was the most sinister symptom of our modern European civilization. I realized that it was the route along which that civilization slid on its way to a new Buddhism, a European Buddhism, nihilism. This exaggerated estimation in which modern philosophers have held pity is quite a new phenomenon. Up to that time, philosophers were absolutely unanimous as to the worthlessness of pity. I need only mention Plato, Spinoza, La Rochefoucauld, and Kant, 4 minds as mutually different as is possible, but united on one point, their contempt of pity. Dies Problem von Werte des Mitleids, so Mitleids is pity, meaning with pain. So or another way is sympathy, to feel pain with somebody. Des Mitleids und der Mitleidsmoral. Ich bin ein Gegner der schändlichen, modernen Gefühlsverweichlichung. Scheint zunächst nur etwas Vereinzeltes, ein Fragezeichen für sich. Wer aber einmal hier hängen bleibt, hier fragen lernt, dem wird es gehen, wie es mir ergangen ist. Eine ungeheure neue Aussicht tut sich ihm auf, eine Möglichkeit fasst ihn wie ein Schwindel, jede Art Misstrauen, Argwohn, Furcht springt hervor, der Glaube an die Moral, an alle Moral wankt. Endlich wird eine neue Forderung laut. Sprechen wir sie aus, diese neue Forderung. Wir haben eine Kritik der moralischen Werte nötig. Der Wert dieser Werte ist selbst ernst einmal in Frage zu stellen, und dazu tut eine Kenntnis der Bedingungen und Umstände Not, aus denen sie gewachsen, unter denen sie sich entwickelt und verschoben haben. Moral als Folge, als Symptom, als Maske, als Tartufferie, als Krankheit, als Missverständnis, aber auch Moral als Ursache, als Heilmittel, als Stimulans, als Hemmung, als Gift, wie eine solche Kenntnis weder bis jetzt da war, noch auch nur begehrt worden ist. Man nahm den Wert dieser Werte als gegeben, als tatsächlich, als jenseits aller Infragestellung. Man hat bisher auch nicht im entferntesten daran gezweifelt und geschwankt, den Guten für höherwertig als den Bösen anzusetzen. Höherwertig im Sinne der Forderung, Nützlichkeit, Gedeihlichkeit in Hinsicht auf den Menschen überhaupt, die Zukunft des Menschen eingerechnet. Wie, wenn das Umgekehrte die Wahrheit wäre? Wie, wenn im Guten auch ein Rundgangssymptom läge, insgleich eine Gefahr, eine Verführung, ein Gift, ein Narkotikum, durch das etwa die Gegenwart auf Kosten der Zukunft lebte. Vielleicht behaglicher, ungefährlicher, aber auch in kleinerem Stile, niedriger, so dass gerade die Moral daran schuld wäre, wenn eine an sich mögliche höchste Mächtigkeit und Pracht des Typus Mensch niemals erreicht würde, so dass gerade die Moral die Gefahr der Gefahren wäre. That was number 6. This problem of the value of pity and of the pity morality. I am an opponent of the modern infamous emasculation of our emotions. Seems at the first blush a mere isolated problem, a note of interrogation for itself. He, however, who once halts at this problem and learns how to put questions will experience what I experienced. A new and immense vista unfolds itself before him. A sense of potentiality seizes him like a vertigo. Every species of doubt, mistrust, and fear springs up. The belief in morality, nay, in all morality, totters. Finally, a new demand voices itself. Let us speak out this new demand. We need a new critique of moral values. The value of these values is the first time to be called into question, and for this purpose a knowledge is necessary of the conditions and circumstances out of which these values grew, and under which they experience their evolution and their distortion. Morality as a result, as a symptom, as a mask as a tartuffism, as disease, as a misunderstanding, but also morality as a cause, as a remedy, as a stimulant, as a fetter, as a drug. So apparently here he uses the term gift not to mean poison, but apparently as drug. Especially as such a knowledge has neither existed up to the present time, nor is even now generally desired. The value of these values was taken for granted as an indisputable fact, which was beyond all question. No one has up to the present exhibited the faintest doubt or hesitation in judging the good man to be of higher value than the evil man, of a higher value with regard specifically to human progress, utility, and prosperity generally, not forgetting the future. What? Suppose the converse were the truth. What? Suppose there lurked in the good man a symptom of retrogression, such as a danger, a temptation, a poison, a narcotic, by means of which the present battened on the future. More comfortable and less risky perhaps than its opposite, but also pettier and meaner. So that morality would really be saddled with the guilt if the maximum potentiality of the power and splendor of the human species were never to be obtained. So that really morality would be the danger of dangers. So it's like a trap, it's like a prison. You get in this prison of morality and you can no longer express your power and glory. Genug, dass ich selbst, seitdem mir dieser Ausblick sich öffnete, Gründe hatte, mich nach gelernten, kühnen und arbeitsamen Genossen umzusehen. Ich tue es heute noch. Es gilt, das Ungeheure ferner und so. We just lost our place because I zoomed in a little bit. Heute, because it changes the whole font. Es gilt das ungeheure Ferne und so versteckte Land der Moral, der wirklich der dagewesenen, wirklich gelebte Moral, mit lauter neuen Fragen und gleichsam mit neuen Augen zu bereisen. Und heißt dies nicht beinahe so viel als dieses Land ernst entdecken, wenn ich dabei unter anderem auch an den genannten Dachterie dachte, so geschah es, weil ich gar nicht zweifelte, dass er von der Natur seiner Fragen selbst auf eine richtigere Methodik, um zu antworten, zu gelangen, gedrängt werden würde. Habe ich mich darin betrogen. Mein Wunsch war es jedenfalls, einem so scharfen und unbeteiligten Auge eine bessere Richtung, die Richtung zur wirklichen Historie der Moral zu geben und ihn vor solchem englischen Hypothesenwesen ins Blaue noch zur rechten Zeit zu warnen. Es liegt ja auf der Hand, welche Farbe für einen Moralgenealogen 100-mal wichtiger sein muss als gerade das Blaue, nämlich das Graue will sagen, das Urkundliche, das wirklich Feststellbare, das wirklich Dagewesene, kurz die ganze lange, schwer zu entziffernde Hieroglyphenschrift der menschlichen Moral-Vergangenheit. Diese war dem Dr. Rie unbekannt, aber er hatte Darwin gelesen, und so reichen sich in seinen Hypothesen auf eine Weise, die zumindest unterhaltend ist, die darwinsche Bestie und der allermodernste, bescheidene Moralzärtling, der nicht mehr beißt, artig die Hand, letzterer mit dem Ausdruck einer gewissen gemütigen und feinen Indolenz im Gesicht, in die selbst ein Gran von Pessimismus, von Ermüdung eingemischt ist, als ob es sich eigentlich gar nicht lohne, als diese Dinge die Probleme der Moral so ernst zu nehmen. Mir nun scheint es umgekehrt gar keine Dinge zu geben, die es mehr lohnte, dass man sie ernst nimmt, zu welchem Lohne es zum Beispiel gehört, dass man eines Tages vielleicht die Erlaubnis erhält, die Heiter zu nehmen. Die Heiterkeit nämlich, oder, um es in meiner Sprache zu sagen, die fröhliche Wissenschaft, the joyful science, ist ein Lohn für einen langen, tapferen, arbeitsamen und unterirdischen Ernst, der freilich nicht jedermanns Sache ist. An dem Tage aber, wo wir aus vollem Herzen sagen, vorwärts, auch unsere alte Moral gehört in die Komödie. Our old moral belongs in a comedy. Haben wir für das Dionysusische Drama, the Dionysian Drama, vom Schicksal der Seele, the destiny of the soul, eine neue Verwicklung und Möglichkeit entdeckt. Und wird sie sich schon zunutze machen, darauf darf man wetten, der große alte ewige Komödiendichter unseres Daseins. The Dasein. Alright, so number 7. Enough that after this vista had disclosed itself to me, I myself had reason to search for learned, bold, and industrious colleagues. I am doing it even to this very day. It means traversing with new clamorous questions and at the same time with new eyes the immense, distant, and completely unexplored land of morality, of a morality which has actually existed and actually been lived, and is not practically equivalent to first discovering that land. If in this context I thought amongst others of the aforesaid Dr. Ray, I did so because I had no doubt that from the very nature of his questions he would be compelled to have recourse to a truer method in order to obtain his answers. Had I deceived myself on that score? I wished at all events to give a better direction of vision to an eye of such keenness and such impartiality. I wished to direct him to the real history of morality, and to warn him while there was still yet time against a world of English theories that culminated in the blue vacuum of heaven. Other colors, of course, rise immediately to one's mind as being 100 times more potent than blue for a genealogy of morals. For instance, gray, by which I mean authentic facts capable of definite proof and having actually existed, or to put it shortly, the whole of that long hieroglyphic script which is so hard to decipher about the past history of human morals. This script was unknown to Dr. Ray, but he had read Darwin, and so in his philosophy the Darwinian beast and that pink of modernity, the demure weakling and dilettante who bites no longer, shakes hands politely in a fashion that is at least instructive, the latter exhibiting a certain facial expression of refined and good-humored indolence, tinged with a touch of pessimism and exhaustion, as if it really did not pay to take all these things, I mean moral problems, so seriously. I, on the other hand, think that there are no subjects which pay better for being taken seriously. Part of this payment is that perhaps eventually they admit of being taken gaily. This gaiety, indeed, or to use my own language, this joyful wisdom or joyful science is a payment. Generally, Wissenschaft is translated as science, and that is the way it's usually translated in a Nietzschean context. This joyful science is a payment for a protracted, brave, laborious, and burrowing seriousness, which it goes without saying is the attribute of but a few. But on that day on which we say from the fullness of our hearts forward, our old morality, too, is fit material for comedy, we shall have discovered a new plot and a new possibility for the Dionysian drama entitled The Soul's Fate. And he will speedily utilize it, one can wager safely, he, the great ancient eternal dramatist of the comedy of our existence. So I used to think life was a tragedy, but now I see that it's a comedy. That's what Nietzsche says. All right, we're almost at the end of the introduction. On on to number 8. Wenn diese Schrift irgendjemandem unverständlich ist und schlecht zu hören geht, if this is all hard to understand, so liegt die Schuld, wie mich dunkt, nicht notwendig an mir. It is basically my fault. Sie ist deutlich genug vorausgesetzt, was ich voraussetze, dass man zuerst meine früheren Schriften gelesen und einige Mühe dabei nicht gespart hat. Diese sind in der Tat nicht leicht zugänglich. Was zum Beispiel meinen Zarathustra anbetrifft, so lasse ich niemanden als dessen Kenner gelten, den nicht jedes seiner Worte irgendwann einmal tief verwundet und irgendwann einmal tief entzückt hat. Ernst dann, nämlich darf er des Vorrechts genießen, an dem halkuonischen Element, aus dem jenes Werk geboren ist, an seiner sonnigen Helle, Ferne, Weite und Gewissheit ehrfürchtig Anteile zu haben. In anderen Fällen macht die aphoristische Form Schwierigkeit. Sie liegt darin, dass man diese Form heute nicht schwer genug nimmt. Ein Aphorismus, rechtschaffen, geprägt und ausgegossen ist damit, dass er abgelesen ist, noch nicht entziffert. Vielmehr hat nun ernst dessen Auslegung zu beginnen, zu der es einer Kunst der Auslegung bedarf. Ich habe in der 3. Abhandlung dieses Buchs ein Muster von dem dargeboten, was ich in einem solchen Falle Auslegung nenne. Diese Abhandlung ist ein Aphorismus vorangestellt, sie selbst ist dessen Kommentar. Freilich tut, der Gestalt das Lesen als Kunst zu üben, eins vor allem Not, was heutzutage gerade am besten verlernt worden ist, und darum hat es noch Zeit bis zur Lesbarkeit meiner Schriften, zu dem man beinahe und jedenfalls nicht moderner Mensch sein muss, das Wiederkauen. Sils Maria, Oberengaden im Juli 1887. That is number 8. If this writing be obscure to any individual and jar on his ears, do not think it is necessarily I who am to blame, so that I'm always getting the negatives incorrectly. It is clear enough on the hypothesis which I presuppose, namely that the reader has first read my previous writings and has not grudged them a certain amount of trouble. It is not indeed a simple matter to get really at their essence. Take, for instance, my Zarathustra. I allow no one to pass muster as knowing that book unless every single word therein has at some time wrought in him a profound wound, and at some time exercised on him a profound enchantment. Then and not till then can he enjoy the privilege of participating reverently in the halcyon element. Halcyon, doesn't that refer to like a bird or denoting a time in the past? An African kingfisher. Yes, the halcyon is a type of a bird, is a mythical bird. The halcyon, I'm misspelling. From ancient Greek alkuon, possibly from Cretan, Hall's salt, I conceive salt. The kingfisher, the halcyon. A classical legend's a bird calming the waters. So calm, undisturbed, peaceful, serene. A bird which can calm the waters. Halcyon. the halcyon element from which that work is born, its sunny brilliance, its distance, its spaciousness, its certainty. In other cases, the aphoristic form produces difficulty, but this is only because this form is treated too casually. An aphorism properly coined and cast into its final mold is far from being deciphered as soon as it has been read. On the contrary, it is then that it first requires to be expounded. Of course, for that purpose, an art of exposition is necessary. The third essay in this book provides an example of what is offered, of what in such cases I call exposition. An aphorism is prefixed to that essay. The essay itself is its commentary. Certainly one quality which nowadays has been best forgotten, and that is why it will take some time yet for my writings to become readable. It is essential in order to practice reading as an art, a quality for the exercise of which it is necessary to be a cow, and under no circumstances a modern man. Rumination. So we must be like cows in order to understand Nietzsche. We have to chew the cud. We have to view every single word as inspiring some profound wound and profound enchantment. You can't just skim Nietzsche. You can't just be like, okay, yeah, I just get the gist. You have to each word is pounding in your soul, and it's so important. So we got through the preface up to the introduction. So that would be the erste Abhandlung gut und böse, gut und schlecht. This is, let's look at, I wish to decipher how old this man, it's a mystery where it's all very mysterious, right? Seneca, is it better to be dragged by the cart to which we are chained, or to stand up and walk with it? Interesting, Seneca. Yes, if we are inexorably tied to society, tied to other people, tied to God, if God is our slave master, if order is enslaving us, then shouldn't we just go along with it? On the other hand, if chaos is the true master, if entropy is the master, shouldn't we go along with that? When there are certain brands of Christianity which say that Satan is the king of the earth, does therefore Seneca recommend we follow Satan? If there is a tyrant above us, should we simply follow along with the tyrant, or should we rebel against the tyrant? Is it best to do what is easiest? Because, of course, it is easier to walk with the cart than to be dragged by it, right? But which is more moral? Is it moral to drag yourself in protest against the cart, or is it to be like a slave to walk with the cart? So it kind of depends on your perspective here. Nietzsche is kind of arguing that we should allow ourselves to be dragged. Maybe he wouldn't put it in such a lowly fashion, but he would say that we should walk in the opposite direction. We should not walk with the cart that is drawing us in some sense in modern society, but he would say etymologically, originally, the most fundamental morality of the universe is my type of morality, this good and bad, not good and evil distinction, this master morality, that is the cart. So the concept of the cart drag, it's almost like Pascal's wager. There's a kind of monotheistic element to it, of Seneca. It presupposes that there is no alternative cart, that there's not multiple carts, when in fact usually we are dealing with multiple carts. Sovereignty, if I understand it, is something that questions actual sovereignty. Advisors question a king. No, that's not my understanding of super sovereignty. Super sovereignty is essentially a force or a power, such as an ideology, which does not refer to itself. So if, let's say, we're on a jungle island, and I say, listen up, everybody, we need to go cut down some trees. And they say, why? And I say, just do it. And I might have a justification. I might have reason. And you could say reasonability is a kind of super sovereignty or logic, if you want to go that deep with it. As I said at the beginning, that some kind of science can be talked of as a super sovereignty, because you're referring to something else. If someone says, why are you telling us to cut down trees? And you say, just do it, you're exercising your sovereignty, your personal authority, your personal will. But if you say, hey, it wasn't my idea, God told me to do it, or it's not my idea, I did some science, and I read a science book, and science book told me the way to survive on a desert island is to cut down trees. Or if I said, it wasn't God, and it wasn't science, but, this is the decision of the people. I said, I'm telling you to do this not because it's my decision, but because we all took a secret vote, a secret ballot, and I counted the votes. And so you're appealing to something which is not a person. God is not a person, at least not immediately within the group. Something outside of the group. So you have you have to think about it as a center and a periphery. And in the center is some kind of object of attention, which in this case is survival. We all want to survive. So we're all thinking, how do we survive? And someone steps into the center and takes hold of the center, or gestures toward the center concerning survival, and says, the way we survive is by cutting down these trees. Now, how does he justify himself? Does he justify himself by his charisma, by his authority, by his sovereignty, by his individuality, or does he appeal to things outside of the system? So when you appeal to God, you're not appealing to the center, you're not appealing to survival, and you're not appealing to your own authority. You're not appealing to the center, you're not appealing to sovereignty. You're not even appealing to the periphery, at least not explicitly. You're appealing to something outside of this system, which we call super sovereignty because it's above the system, independent of the system. You appeal to God. You appeal to science. You appeal to democracy, right? These are all super sovereignties. These are abstractions which are not within the social systems, but they are abstracted outside of the social system. Now, of course, if we are engaging in some kind of social reductionism, we have to somehow trace the origins of super sovereignty back into this social scene and say that it originated somewhere. So the idea then following this framework of thought is that super sovereignty is the result of the projection of the ego into an abstraction. So if I say, hey, I think we should cut down the trees, and people start chopping the trees, and then a tree falls down and kills a child, if I take responsibility for that action, I could be in big trouble. Maybe the tribes people get angry at me and decide that they need to kill me as a scapegoat, as a sacrifice to appease the gods or whatever. They might just get angry at me as a person without any kind of superstition around it. In order to avoid that, I can say, no, I didn't tell you to cut down the trees. It was God who said to cut down the trees. You can't blame me. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just a priest. So super sovereignty is priestly. It has nothing to do with rebellion necessarily. You can have a structure as our democratic society is based around democracy. It's based around super sovereignty. Trump is not the sovereign. The CIA is not the sovereign. The FBI is not the sovereign. Even I guess you could say liberalism, but liberalism is not a person again. So you're removing the personal sovereignty. Now, super sovereignty is pretty important, but we can still connect with the concept of sovereignty. We still can understand how it was a primitive form of organizing societies, because when you have small groups of people, like you have a bunch of kids in high school, sovereignty appears. There, you also have super sovereignty. You have class president and voting and popularity contests. But you have cases in which the bully or the big man or the alpha or the team leader or the captain steps forth and he says, this is the way we're doing it. And people follow him and they say, why? I mean, he could appeal to God. He could appeal to democracy. He could appeal to some super sovereignty. But sometimes he can just say, just do it. Because it's a good idea. Trust me. Trust me when I say this. So we've got Nick Land. I haven't listened to Nick Land. I was meaning to listen to Nick Land, his interview with Justin Murphy, but I didn't quite get around to it. Maybe someday. But again, he's not the best. He's not the best orator. Let's say that. French is patrician. German is cringe. Yes, certainly that is a Napoleonic view. Wait, is this going to be all German, or is this going to do some English exegesis? I don't know. You tell me. This is some weird MK Ultra stuff. Maybe it is. Maybe who can really know these things? How can I get outside myself to objectively? How would you know? How would you know if you're secretly being mind controlled by right now? You wouldn't, because the mind control would have reoriented your personality to make you believe that the thoughts you were having were sovereign to yourself, that you were in control of your own thoughts, that you were the originator of your own thoughts. In a way, we're all mind controlled, right? The mind is a construct of sociality. And so in a sense, We're all mind controlled. None of our thoughts are original. All of them originate outside of ourselves. So, the idea of, mind control is silly. That's a silly idea. No, it's like every single person is mind controlled. Like the ability to speak language is a form of mind control. And to free ourselves from mind control, I think you can really only do in death. Even animals, they're controlled by their genetics, as I said before. To be a living thing is to be controlled. And Schopenhauer, of course, his opinion is that there's the will behind all this. The will is controlling us, and the will is forcing us to do certain things that we may not necessarily want to do on some deeper level, that our soul rebels against this willful expression of striving, that really what we want truly in our souls is to be at peace and to be liberated and to enter into enlightenment, to enter into nirvana, as Schopenhauer said. I got to respect the sheer esotericism of streaming German into the D-Live abyss. Yes, absolutely. Nietzsche and Schopenhauer both loved Balthasar Gracian. So, sounds pretty Greek to me. Balthasar Gracian. What is that? Is that a font? Or is this a Spanish Jesuit philosopher? Well, it makes sense that Schopenhauer and Nietzsche would both like a guy because Nietzsche likes Schopenhauer. Nietzsche likes Schopenhauer. He just says, but Schopenhauer doesn't go far enough, or he gets stuck, or he inverts the truth or something, or he kind of falls down a pit. But Nietzsche really likes Schopenhauer. Nietzsche, I mean, in a sense, yeah, Nietzsche is the opposite of Schopenhauer. But we heard how he described Schopenhauer, this great teacher. He doesn't view Schopenhauer as an idiot or something like that. So, Balthasar Gracian, let's see. The novel reveals a philosophy of pessimism, which Schopenhauer identified. So he achieved, the novel is called the Kritikon, and he was born in Spain. So here is the story of the Kritikon. Kritilo, man of the word, so he's the critical man, little criticism, is shipwrecked on the coast of an island. Oh, a little synchronicity there, being on an island. The coast of an island of Santa Elena, where he meets Adrenio. My Spanish isn't the best. Andrenio. So Andre means man. So Andrenio is the natural man who has grown up completely ignorant of civilization. Together they undertake a long voyage to the Isle of Immortality, traveling through the long and prickly road of life. This is very much like the Pilgrim's Progress, if you've ever heard of that, with, and now our two, one is named Criticism and the other one's named Natural Man, and they're going to voyage to the Island of Immortality. It's like, you don't get this kind of, now it's sort of trite, now it's sort of overused, and it comes off as like purple prose if you write in this way, but at this time this was compelling literature. In the first part, En la primavera de la niñez, in the spring of childhood, they join the royal court where they suffer all manner of disappointments. In the second part, en el otoño de la veronil edad, in the autumn of the age of manliness, they pass through Aragon, where they visit the house of Salastano, an anagram of the name of Gracian's friend, Lastanosa, and travel to France, which the author calls the wasteland of Hippocrinda. So French, the language of French comes from the wasteland of Hippocrinda. So I don't know about that, but apparently this guy was very popular in the German-speaking lands, because he called France a wasteland, populated entirely by hypocrites and dunces, ending with a visit to the house of lunatics. Wow. Not a big French respecter. In the third part, en el invierno de la vejez, in the winter of old age, they arrive in Rome, where they encounter an academy, where they meet the most inventive of men, finally arriving at the Isle of Immortality. He is intelligent. Who is he? Is the island himself? the intelligence. He is intelligent and contributed greatly to the world. Maybe they're talking about Balthazar or Cretilo or Andreino. One of his most famous phrases is respect to yourself if you would have others respect you. That is very good advice. Respect yourself. Come on, guys, respect yourself. If you want respect, you gotta respect yourself. He's been excessively praised by Schopenhauer. Nietzsche wrote of the Oraculo, which I'm guessing is a different book. He wrote, Europe has never produced anything finer or more complicated in matters of moral subtlety. Schopenhauer called it absolutely unique for those who wish to prosper in the great world. So, cool guy, cool Jesuit. Could take a look, could learn a lot of things from the Jesuits. A lot of things to be learned from those Jesuits. Pity, similar root as pathos, would make sense. Is this the genealogy of morals? Yeah. Am I rebelling against my father? Well, maybe in a more abstract sense, but I don't know. We're trying to engage with ideas. We're trying to understand what's going on because I'm behind the curveball. Everybody else has read Nietzsche, and I just don't know what's going on. So we're trying to force ourselves to understand the arguments. Lear shouting into the tempest, we are Kent, or the fool if you want. That's a response to Wiki. So I am like King Lear shouting into the tempest. There's like a storm going on, and I'm like, let's find some German to read. Gut und böse, Gott und schlecht. I'm like shouting into the tempest about the genealogy of morals. Deine Aussprache ist wirklich gut. Danke. Vielen Dank. I didn't watch the last video. What made Ken pick up Nietzsche? I thought he didn't like him. I explained that at the beginning of the stream. I explained I don't like Nietzsche. What led him here? Well, I'm trying to understand my opposition to Nietzsche. I'm trying to understand, why don't I like this guy? Why do I rebel against him? This rebellion. Why do I rebel against rebellion? What is the meaning of this? Am I Nietzschean in my rejection of Nietzsche? If our world is now a Nietzschean world, if our world is ruled by Nietzschean principles, and I rebel against the world, is this some kind of second-order Nietzscheanism? Have I, in the same way that people who critique liberalism do so, they say, democracy is bad because it doesn't fulfill the will of the people. Well, it's like, okay, so you're trying to critique liberalism as not being liberal enough, as not being super sovereign enough, as not fulfilling the will of the people enough, rather than critiquing liberalism maybe in a deeper sense of saying, liberalism appeals to the desires of the people or tries to satisfy the desires of the people, and yet in doing so, it really negates the true desires of the people because the people, by definition, those who constitute the people rather than the rulers are those who by their nature do not understand what they want. Those who understand what they want no longer remain with the masses of the people, but they rise above the people to become rulers because of their own ability to understand themselves. It is a lack of understanding which constitutes membership among the populace. And so those who are part of the populace, by their nature, they don't understand what they want. And so for us to appeal to liberalism, or then the criticism of liberalism being, we know we can't have liberalism because it's not populist enough. Well, populist in what sense? You're doing good by the people. You're providing them with some good, whether it's healthcare or safety or a prosperous nation or stability, whatever you're providing them with. Is that what they really want on their deepest level? Or do they want on some deep level to be confronted with trial and to be confronted with challenge? Is that what people really want? So, I guess it's this question of, I can just say I don't like Nietzsche, and the response to people, the response to that is, well, you just haven't read Nietzsche. Or if you have read Nietzsche, you just don't understand Nietzsche, right? You haven't felt every word as a wound and as an exuberant experience, or whatever phrase he uses. You haven't really connected with the text, and therefore your criticism is based on ignorance. So by reading Nietzsche, by understanding Nietzsche, if we are to criticize him, we are to do so on better grounds, and just to be smart, to be big brain, to have big brain. We read Nietzsche. Okay, important guy. We're going to read him. We will find out. Yes, we will. 26. I don't like this comment section. I don't like how it's hard to figure out what people are responding to. Holy cow, I've got my copy of Genealogy out and I'm reading along in English. Of course, we can more easily work our way out of the chains than if we are being dragged along. Okay. All right. Let's do a time check. Let's see where we're at on time right now. I got my little timer. It's about an hour. We've done an hour, so we can always pick it back up, but I think this is a good place for a break, a little stopping point. All right, so let's stop here and then spontaneously and randomly reappear at another point in the future. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.